and part 9 of Revelation. The ambiguous nature of Al-Quran, al-tashabuh. Allah represents the totality of objective reality. His knowledge is absolute. He neither requires further knowledge nor needs any form of guidance. But human beings, in their attempt to apprehend Allah's absolute knowledge, can only do so within the limits of their relative historical understanding. Allah took His partiality in human understanding into consideration when He decided to impart His knowledge to humankind. An analogy to this would be the case of a father who wants to teach his 5-year-old son the things that he has learned about theoretical physics. The father is a trained physicist and an international authority on the subject, whereas his son knows nothing about it yet. He teaches him his expertise in a piecemeal manner over a long period of time, that is, by considering his son's age and by proportioning the amount he can teach according to what his son has already learned. This approach requires that father and son are in constant contact with each other, and that the father never stops teaching his son until he fully understands the entirety of his father's knowledge. Or alternatively, the father gives his son a text to read, which encapsulates the ultimate summary of his knowledge and never again changes what he has written. Since the son would initially not understand much, he would be required to come back to the text year after year and every time absorb a little bit more of it. In this case, even though the text remains fixed and unchanged, its constant changes insofar as the son would develop a gradual understanding of it. It is this quality of a text, where the form remains fixed but is constant moving, that we define as the text ambiguity or tashabuh. Like in the example of father and son, Allah communicated with humankind in two ways. At first, constantly, repeatedly, and over a long period of time, but after that, only by one single instance. Until His revelation to Muhammad, Allah repeatedly returned to humankind to renew His message. After the revelation of the Torah, for example, He sent down the Gospel, and after the revelation of the Gospel, He returned again and brought down the Quran. But after that, He will never return again, nor will any other prophet or messenger ever appear again to renew Allah's message. This has serious consequences for the way we understand the book. With the Torah and the Gospel, Allah attuned His revelation to the actual historical circumstances that formed the intellectual horizon of the Jews and Christians who were the recipients of His message. In other words, God's revelation showed all the signs of the zeitgeist that these periods had. It would be seriously anachronistic to go back to the Torah and the Gospel in order to understand the text that was revealed later, the book. It would be more appropriate, as we done during the European Enlightenment, to regard these texts, which inadequately discuss the law of nature and the complexities of the cosmos, as historically obsolete. Neither the Torah nor the Gospel possesses the universal quality of tashabuh, since they are purely historical texts, written for a specific group of people in a narrowly defined historical period. It is no wonder that the Torah and the Gospel have no relevance anymore in modern sciences. Allah no longer communicates directly with human beings. He returns to them solely through the text of the book, revealed 1400 years ago. And yet, even today, we still absorb immense knowledge about objective reality from His text. This can only imply that even if the form of His text is fixed, is constant, its content still moves. A miracle is is this elasticity of the text allows its reader to relate what is read directly to what is experienced in reality. Generations of future readers will do the same without having violated either the form or the content of the Quran. No one, of course, will ever be able to fully understand or exhaustively interpret the text. This can only be done by God. Even those who are deeply rooted in knowledge, al-rasikhuna fil ilm, will always be restricted in their interpretation due to their limited understanding of the truth. As for Muhammad, he never actually ventured to interpret a single line of the Quran. Instead, he interpreted other parts of the book, for example, the al-Kitab, but not the Quran, which he was asked to deliver uninterpreted to the people. The approving and controlling nature of the Quran is the scripture we have revealed to you, Prophet, is the truth and confirms the scriptures that came with it. It ma bayna yadayhi. Fatir, verse 31. The disbelievers say, we will believe neither this Quran nor the scriptures that came with it. Alladhi bayna yaday. Saba, verse 31. Generations of exegetes interpreted the phrase ma bayna yadayhi as scriptures, the gospel, and the Torah that preceded it, the Quran, ignoring the fact that their interpretation seriously undermines the authority of Muhammad's prophethood. Having been provided with a revelation that simply confirmed previous scriptures would have dramatically sabotaged the prophet's mission to convince people that he had received a new message from God. They also ignored Muhammad's assurance that he had brought a revelation that abrogated previous scriptures, including the Torah and the Gospel. How could they ever think of that Quran only confirmed what had been revealed before? The scriptures that came with the Quran was Muhammad's messengerhood, risala, that needed to be confirmed by the truth. Verses that instruct people to pray, fast, go on a pilgrimage, arrange divorce and inheritance and such are verses that require absolute obedience and therefore need to be authorized. Approval had to come from outside his messengerhood, and it came through Muhammad's prophethood. Objective reality encapsulates within the Quran and the seven Mathani, confirms the rules of human behavior and sanctions what has been declared as allowed or taboo, halal or haram. Disbelievers are those who believe neither in the Quran nor the al-Kitab that came down with it. In sum, revelation to Muhammad in the form of the Quran confirms the al-Kitab which had preceded the Quran. Verse 35, verse 31. The Quran's ambiguous nature, al-tashabuh, was the miracle that Muhammad brought to the people. It was the most abstract miracle that God could ever have created. Previous prophets had to rely on concrete miracles which they performed in front of a disbelieving crowd. An example, when Moses turned a staff into a snake inside the Pharaoh's palace. Without the performances of the miracles, prophets could not convince people that they were in the possession of a divine message. Their miracles were nothing but extra textual proof that their messages came from God. This happened in humankind's primitive phase when people thought with their senses and when only phenomena that defied the law of nature would impress people. The miracle that Muhammad performed occurred on a different, more abstracted level. His miracles was the Quran itself. No extra textual miracle was required to prove that his message came from God. Revelation Part 10 will follow. Thank you for following Part 9.